Jim, you look like a fucking geek. I had to do this shit my first year here too. It was horrible. I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Is this a fire hazard?
I don't know. It's a coolness hazard for you though, Jim. Hey, not bad. Anyway, Jim and I are doing a promo now to let you know what the schedule will be for the video department here at SBR Videos. Of course, Jim and I have been doing the Loshak and the Bag show, which has gotten a nice response. We are going to be on a break though. There are going to be no Jimmy the Bag shows from Wednesday, December 20th through to Tuesday, January 2nd. So Tuesday the 19th is going to be the last day over the holiday season for the Loshak and the Bag shows. Then they will pick up again on Wednesday the 27th, but only once a day at 6 o'clock Eastern time, and that will be for a week. And then on a Wednesday, January 3rd is when things will start up again, twice a day. Jimmy the Bag, you think we'll be able to pick up where we left off? Do you think that the break will throw our chemistry off somehow and all of a sudden it just won't be as good of a show?
No, I'll be fucking itching.
It's going to be a great show.
To be back in action,
it's going to be as good of a show as ever on January 3rd. In between then, though, in the 12 o'clock Eastern time slot, we are going to have some great content. We're going to be doing Bulls specials hosted by myself with Big Man and Drew Martin as guest analysts, and we're going to break down the Bulls each day for the Bulls that are coming up that day, and that will start on Wednesday the 20th and last through to Tuesday, January 2nd, every day at 12 o'clock Eastern time, bowl coverage. So that should be, I'm looking forward to that for sure, breaking down the Bulls of that day in depth, and then Jimmy the Bag on January 3rd. We'll see if we can't make maybe even a better show in the new year, right?
Right.
New year, new me, new Loshak and the Bag show starting January 3rd, twice a day.
My back is burning. Should that be happening?
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Loshak. Welcome to SBR Sports Picks. This is the College Bowl special show for Thursday, December 28th. Of course, we are joined by our regular, I guess you would have to put it, brain trust, quote unquote, air quotes, of college football handicapping experts, Jimmy the Bag, Drew Martin, and Big Man on campus. We all had losing days yesterday in yesterday's bowls, although congratulations to Drew Martin for having the least losing day out of all of us. Drew Martin is 10-5 in these shows so far, so nice job, Drew Martin, for saving our asses and saving the respectability of this show. Again, today's Thursday, December 28th. We got 4 bowls today. We'll see if we can't turn it around, although these bowls are looking tricky as ever, because in the bowls, of course, you're always expecting the unexpected, lots of unknown factors, and you can always you can usually make a strong case for either side. Let's start with the first bowl of the day, Virginia against Navy. This one, obviously Virginia has already played a triple option offense this year. It was Georgia Tech, and they won that one outright as a big underdog, and it was a very high scoring game. So I was thinking maybe this is going to be a relatively decent scoring game and maybe another shot with an over here on a low total, although the total's gotten bet way down. It opened at about 55. It's now down to 51 or 51.5. But clearly, that the new quarterback for Navy is a demon. He can be hard to stop even if you know what's coming. And Navy's very vulnerable against the pass. And Kurt Benkert, if he's reasonably on his game, should be able to have a decent passing day. So I was thinking about maybe taking a shot with the over. And also the line move has seen a lot of bouncing back and forth. First, some money came in on Virginia, making Navy an underdog. Now late money's coming in on Navy. Navy's 1.5, 2, or even 2.5 at some places. Question is just, will Virginia be able to stop Navy's triple option offense? And will Navy's defense be able to contain Virginia's big passing game? Let's start with Drew Martin, in honor of Drew Martin having the least shitty day out of all of us yesterday. Drew Martin, what's your take on Virginia against Navy?
It's like the opposite of golf, Pete, so I guess I'll lead us off. This is a military bowl, and I believe Navy's playing at home. 20 degrees, 13-mile-an-hour winds, a couple things to keep in mind. Both teams off of 3 straight losses. Navy's coming in 1-6 their last 7 games. So Navy, what's really going on there? You brought up Bronken Mendenhall against the option against Georgia Tech. They did give up 200 yards on the ground in that game. Also, they gave up almost 200 yards in the air, which is kind of surprising. There was also some weather issues in that game, so keep that in mind. That was also off of a normal week's prep time. I believe they played at Pitt the week before, so even maybe a little bit shorter prep time for that option attack. Given Bronco Mendenhall the extra preparation time, I like it. The year before, they actually held Georgia Tech to their lowest output and only 8 first downs, and that was with a lot worse defense. So the extra preparation time, and what, we're almost getting a field goal now because some big opinion on this on this side. I'm actually going with Virginia. I know it's going against Navy in a military bowl. BMOC will probably he doesn't like that side, or maybe he does. I don't know. BMOC knows these academies pretty well, but I think I'm leading with Virginia here, Pete.
Sure, it is a home game for Navy officially, but it's not a huge road game for Virginia. They are very close. They should have some fans here. And as far as totals are concerned, Navy's a very tricky team. I think if you recall, in early September, Drew Martin in the office, I told you I love the under in Navy against Tulane. That one cashed. We've seen a lot of very low-scoring games with Navy involved, but also some very high-scoring games. And this game might resemble somewhat the game against SMU, which went soaring over the total. That went into the 80s. Their game against Air Force went into the 90s. Against Cincinnati went into the 70s. What do you think about maybe a shot with the over at just 51, even though, again, that would be going against general line movement since the opening line?
I mean, the extra preparation time for the option kind of has me pumping the brakes on that, although I could see UVA moving the ball, through the air. That's why I kind of lean towards the Virginia side. I don't really have too strong of an opinion on the total, Pete.
All right, well, Drew Martin's going to make Virginia an official pick right now. It is a very split line, market wide, 1.5, 2, or 2.5. Bookmaker has plus 2.5, minus 105. So that will be Drew's official pick on this one. Virginia plus 2.5, minus 105, getting almost a field goal. And at Bookmaker, you could probably buy up to 3 at just a minus 120 there. So clearly, some late money coming in on Navy. Big man on campus. You follow these service academies very closely. It is a home game for Navy. They can be very, very tough to stop, even if you know what's coming. Virginia, a good team, but not a great team. Late money coming in on Navy. What do you think here, big man?
Plus, they have no legitimate bowl experience either. It's been very long since they made a bowl last. Now you got to go play the military bowl in Annapolis with all the cadets off a loss in that Army game. I have the feeling, Peter, I've always made the case, I don't want to bet against the military schools in a bowl game. It's just one of those things where towards the end of the year, you have seniors on this team. Clearly, I remember when Keenan Reynolds was there, you play for your brother in arms at the military academies. It's just kind of that brotherhood that I'm not saying other teams don't have, but I'm not wanting to really step in front of it, frankly. And I think it's a tough game plan to prepare for, because with Navy this year, you have the uncertainty at who's going to play quarterback. Is it Aby or is it going to be Malcolm Perry, who I think at some point Malcolm Perry will challenge to win the Heisman. I don't know if he will, but he will have his name in the hat at some point. He's a freshman. He's a great player, and that's a lot of a question mark. What do you prepare for, Peter? Do you prepare for him, or do you prepare for Aby, who can play quarterback as well? You also look at the fact that Drew mentioned it. They didn't fare too well against another rushing attack this year. They did win the game, but they gave up 36 points. Weather looks clear here, but the wind is a bit of a problem. That's definitely going to suit Navy a little bit better. They're in front of their home field here. And Niumatalolo at home, I don't really want to bet against that. It's one of those things where I just don't bet against it too often. On the road, you look at Navy, had some trouble this year. Notre Dame, Temple, other games, but it's a home game. They have that awful loss mentality, losing the Army. It was a tough one. Give me Ken Niumatalolo in this spot. I'm not saying Mendenhall won't have him prepared, but I look at this kind of like the Iowa game yesterday. Two kind of similar teams, kind of on the same level, but I think Navy will just do a little bit more towards the end. I don't want to bet against them in a bowl game.
So you're making Navy an official pick here?
Yep, I have a plan. I'll play on every game here. I've had some bad picks lately, but I'm going to go Navy -2. It's always about following up a bad day with a good day, Peter.
Sure.
Let's follow it up with Navy.
Well, again, it is a split line. It's 2.5, 2, or 1.5. BetOnline has 1.5 minus 117, and the Greek has minus 1.5 minus 110. So we can give you Navy minus 1.5 minus 110. And if this one lands on 2, then both Drew Martin and Big Men on Campus will win their picks on this one. That's why line shopping is so important. Once again, Drew Martin and Big Man on Campus going head to head. Jimmy the Bag. Drew Martin doing well in bowl games this year, likes Virginia plus 2.5. Big man on campus, expert on service academy teams, brothers in arms, minus 1.5 is his pick on this one for Navy. Jimmy the Bag, what do you like here?
I think Big Man brings up a lot of good points about the Shipman, but I am on Virginia here. I believe in Kurt Benkert. He had an excellent season, 25 TDs, 8 picks, 3,062 yards, eclipsed Matt Schaub's school record. He threw 4 TDs and 384 yards against that tough Miami defense that ranked 20th in the nation, allowing just 19.9 points a game. I understand Virginia's running game is non-existent. That is a problem. But I think that if they can get a monster game from Micah Kaiser, 134 tackles this year, 9.5 tackles for losses, 5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and then Quinn Blanding, if the Navy goes with AB, Quinn Blanding will have his eyes on him, will come down, not bother, let the cornerbacks handle the receivers, and he'll come down and he'll watch AB wherever he goes. I just feel like Virginia's offense can take care of business enough. And, the Navy's defense is okay, 59th in total defense, 61st in pass defense. But Virginia has to have a plan. I know it didn't work that well against Georgia Tech, allowing 36 points, but they've looked at this triple option. They've seen it before. They have to have put a plan together. I believe that Mendenhall will have put a plan together, and I like Virginia taking a couple points.
All right, so we'll give you the line we gave Drew. Virginia plus 2.5, minus 105. Let's quickly go back to a big man on campus before I make my decision here. Big man, I'm thinking about a shot with the over, unless you think that that Bronco Mendenhall will really have these guys prepped on defense and will be able to slow down the game and stop Navy. I'm thinking that Navy is just hard to stop, even when you know what's coming. That new quarterback, if you watch tape of him, he is a friggin' sprinter, a demon on offense. And, Navy probably will have a defensive game plan to be a little bit better against the pass, but I think they should be at least a little bit vulnerable. One way or another, I'm thinking it's more likely than not to get into the low 50s, or do you think I'm wrong on that one, big man?
I actually think you're right. I actually like the over. I saw this being more of a shootout as opposed to being a lower scoring game. I mean, we can mention the weather, but weather didn't seem to matter much in that Iowa game. I mean, that was terrible conditions on the field, and they were still able to go up and over the total. You look at the line coming down, obviously that's a plus here. And look, I don't think Virginia's going to have a lot of success against Navy defensively. I also don't think that Navy's going to have a ton of success against the pass, but I just trust Navy more to get a stop. I agree with the guys. Benkert's a good quarterback. He's played well, and he's played some real good defense in that conference. But I've noticed with Virginia, seems like when they step up in competition, they have just not gotten the job done. And that's, again, that's why the bowl games are fascinating, because there's personnel problems. Will this team match up? A lot of that, though, should be really thrown out the window, because Florida State played like shit all year, and they look like a world beater yesterday. So it's really about motivation. You're going to get the motivation out of Virginia, and you're going to get the motivation out of Navy. It's a close game. It will be. I just think Navy's a slightly better team. But I agree with you, Peter. I think the over, these are not optimal weather conditions, but they're good. I mean, they're not bad. They're great for Navy. Navy wants weather conditions like.
Yeah, actually, that Florida State game, when we discussed it, I did mention that Florida State was going to be motivated there again, because they were playing for a coach that all the reports said they love to play for, and I just thought we all thought that there was just going to be a not a big enough talent gulf to justify a 2-touchdown spread here, and we were wrong on that one. All right, so I will go with the over. 51 minus 110. This is also split line, 51 or 51.5. It opened at 55. And again, we've seen very low scoring games from Navy, very high scoring games from Navy this year. The Virginia game against Georgia Tech was very high scoring. This is a modest total, could easily go under, but I'll make my pick at over 51 minus 110. I'm definitely not betting that one, but I am going to make a pick on every bowl game here, and I'll make that my pick here. So, Jimmy the Bag and Drew Martin going on Virginia plus 2.5, minus 105. Big Man on Campus going on Navy minus 1.5, minus 110. And I'm going to take the over 51, minus 110. Now let's move on to another very interesting bowl. Virginia Tech and Oklahoma State. Obviously, this is another classic bowl situation. Two teams from different conferences pitting strength against strength here, right? Massive passing game from Oklahoma State against an excellent, some would say elite passing defense in Virginia Tech. The question is which will win out. I was looking at this one thinking that one way or another Oklahoma State would create separation at some point, but this line has been getting bet up. When I handicapped it yesterday, it was 5 or 5.5. Now it's up to a 6 or 6.5. Once again, in honor of Drew Martin's excellent results this year in our bowl videos. Let's start with Drew Martin. What do you think? Do you think Oklahoma State's passing offense gets the edge here, or do you think the Virginia Tech's excellent pass defense will be able to slow them down?
I think Mason Rudolph's definitely going to get his. I mean, you do got to respect the Virginia Tech passing defense, but Oklahoma State's been able to move the ball on pretty much any opponent they've played this year. A couple instances where they haven't, but I could see them, definitely putting up 4, maybe 5 touchdowns. Also, Pete, the other aspect here, we got Virginia Tech's offense, a redshirt freshman quarterback, extra preparation time with Justin Fuente. Remember Justin Fuente? The offense he produced at Memphis, bringing it over to Virginia Tech. I kind of like that profile there, a younger quarterback with the extra practices. This is one of those times you could see the quarterback's kind of talent level rise here in the bowl game. I'd look for that as well. Also, a lot of the bowl games that we've talked about, even the one we just talked about a couple yesterday, weather has kind of been an issue. When you get below the freezing level, below 40 degrees, it kind of affects the football play. This one here, it's in Orlando, Camping World Stadium, the old Citrus Bowl here. I'm actually 45 minutes away in a place called Melbourne, Florida right now, just to the east.
Oh, beautiful town.
Yeah, it's a great town. I recommend it if you're in this part of the country. Great part of the country, by the way. But it's about 65 degrees, light winds, so that won't be an issue. I actually I like the over here, Pete. I could see the offense is kind of taking a step ahead of the defenses, and I would go with the over.
Wow, yeah, the total is very interesting. The total was set right in between, these two teams' tendencies. Oklahoma State had only 2 games under this number all year. Virginia Tech had only 2 games over this number all year. But you think that Virginia Tech's going to take a step up in their offensive production in this one, Drew?
Yeah, I definitely do. You got Mason Rudolph on the other side. He's going to get his, the extra prep time with the great offensive mind and Justin Fuente with the young quarterback. I think that all leads towards the over.
All right. They did play their first game against West Virginia. When I look at their schedule, that's sort of like the most comparable game to this one. And that one was fairly modest scoring. They won it, but it was 31-24, and they were able to hold West Virginia down a little bit. And it wasn't an explosively high-scoring game, but that was obviously in early September. All right, Drew Martin, let's give you the official line here. You're going to take the over here. It is, 61.5, 62, or 62.5. So line chopping, obviously paramount. 61.5 minus 107. That is the line right now at Pinnacle. Drew Martin will take Oklahoma State over 61.5 minus 107. And again, other places have 62, 62.5. Let's go to you, Jimmy the Bag. What do you think? Do you think that Oklahoma State's passing offense going to have a big day here, or Virginia Tech's strong passing defense is going to be able to contain them somewhat?
I think they're going to have a big enough day, and that is the key here. Third best offense in the league, number 1 passing attack, obviously up against the Hokies' 5th best defense in the nation. Mason, like Drew said, Mason Rudolph will get his. I think the big thing that pushed me towards the Cowboys is that the Hokies' top receiver, Cam Phillips, caught 71 passes, 964 yards, 7 TDs, out of the lineup after surgery for sports hernia. Their top rusher, Trayvon McMillian, decided to transfer and won't play. Those are big losses. I like Fuente, but those are big losses that he's going to have to deal with. And I do respect Foster's defense. How could you not? They do a good job, but I think they're going to be in a little over their head. This Oklahoma State offense is firing on all cylinders. Washington and Aitman combined for 2,500 yards receiving. Justin Hill is an absolute great running back, ran for 1,347 yards, 14 TDs. I just think Oklahoma State has too much firepower and will be able to get at least cover.
All right, so that's going to be your official pick here, Oklahoma State?
Yes.
Okay, it was 5.5 yesterday. Now it's up to 6 or 6.5. So we'll line chop, and -6, -110 at a bunch of places is where the best line is right now. That's what I was thinking as well, Jimmy the Bag. But so that's bad news for you because I have not had a good read on these bowl games at all. Big man on campus. I was thinking about a shot with Oklahoma State minus the points. It's creeping up, still under a touchdown though. What's your take on this game, big man?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Drew Martin here. I like the over as well. I don't. Listen, I voiced my opinion on the Big 12. I think it's a disastrous conference. It's terrible to watch. They do nothing at the next level ever. It's very overrated in my opinion, but I do like Oklahoma State all year. Mason Rudolph's been a great quarterback. I thought he was an outside Heisman player. They have such a great offense. And I got to tell you, I think defensively they're a fucking mess. I think they're going to get, even with some of the injuries that Vatek has, you do look at the fact that Josh Jackson doesn't count for a lot of the rushing. Deshaun McCleese as well. Cam Phillips, that's a huge loss. Jimmy's right with that. But you still have the opportunity to move the football. This is a bad defense that's going to give points up. They do every year. They're not going to stop now. You mentioned the optimal weather conditions. And I got to tell you, I think this Virginia Tech defense is a bit of a fraud. I think this is the best offense they're going to face all year. Look at their schedule, honestly. Other than Clemson, name me a high-level quarterback in that group. There's not one. Maybe other than the first game of the season. You're facing Delaware, Boston College, North Carolina, Duke, Miami, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Virginia, all lower-level quarterbacks, teams that don't throw the ball around, teams that aren't going to go up-tempo and go quick like Oak State does. I think they're going to get frauded in this game a little bit. I think they're going to be exposed a bit as well. I think Tech's good for 20, 24 points. I think Virginia Tech will give up plenty of points. I think this is a bit of a shootout on an optimal weather condition here. I agree with Drew Martin. I'm going to go over as well.
Yeah, another thing that I'm thinking about, I'm leaning with you guys as well, is that Virginia Tech, their defensive scheme is very good. I wouldn't necessarily call them a fraud, but it's definitely very good against stopping certain kinds of teams. But they tend to play man defense in the secondary, and against teams that can't beat you, that is very, very effective. Against teams that can beat you, what are you going to do? Nothing. Do you think that Justin Fuente is going to come up with a different kind of defensive scheme here, or do you think he's going to go one-on-one, play man defense against Oklahoma State's receivers?
Well, I mean, I think you can try to do whatever you can against Oklahoma State. And look, I mean, if you can come up with a game plan, salute to you. I don't know what the game plan is going to be, but I don't know that they're not an easy team to stop. They have 4 or 5 really good receivers, and Mason Rudolph's really good. I mean, he's going to be able to decipher defenses. He's going to be able to make the reads. I just don't think Virginia Tech's an elite defense. Maybe under Bud Foster 5 years ago, maybe, but like you said, Peter, the scheme that they see in the ACC is not necessarily a Big 12 scheme. This is going to be the best quarterback they faced, probably by a lot. I don't know if it's going to be easy. You got time to prepare, but until you get to the game and you actually see it go on, how do you scout this? How do you play? You have no quarterback you can scout against with this kind of team. So I don't know that it'll make much difference. Fuente's a good coach, but I think Drew made a good point. He's also a guy at Memphis that was pretty up-tempo a lot of the time, too. You're going to have to keep up with Oak State because they score quick and they score fast.
All right. Well, I have some bad news for you guys. I am agreeing with all of you, and I am going to take both of these picks as official picks myself. I'm going to take Oklahoma State -6, -110, and I'm going to take the over 61.5, -107. That's what I was thinking when I handicapped the game, and your analysis has pushed me to do that. So, again, Jimmy the Bag taking Oklahoma State -6, -110. I'm on that one myself. Big Man on Campus and Drew Martin both taking Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech over 61.5, -107, and I will take that one as well. 2 plays for me, and Big Man and Jim agreeing with both of those plays. All right, let's move on to Stanford TCU. Another interesting bowl game here. A little bit hard to figure out what to make of this bowl game as far as betting value is concerned. We know that TCU, under Gary Patterson in general, has done great against the Pac-12 and Stanford. Even last year when they were down by like 30 whatever at the half against Oregon, they came roaring back and wound up getting the win and cover in that one. The line is definitely moving in their favor now. It opened at 2.5. It's now up to a 3, juiced -112 at Pinnacle. And Stanford, one of these programs that's maybe not necessarily elite level explosive most years, but very, very reliable, very, very dependable. They kind of have the nice psychological makeup of a team that you want to see going into a bowl game. So as this line creeps up, I'm starting to like TCU less and less. I was leaning TCU to start just because of their great record against Stanford against the Pac-12 in general. And looking at Stanford this year, obviously Bryce Love, awesome, major, massive plus for Stanford. And the quarterback Costello has been good as well. And they have a great, offensive production, great offensive production from their tight ends, but their defense is a little bit, less dominant than it has been in years past. And I feel like to beat teams like TCU, Stanford really needs a top-level, Stanford-level defense, Stanford-quality defense to beat a team like TCU. So I was leaning TCU, but as it heads up to a 3, I'm starting to doubt it, to second-guess it. Drew Martin, this is a very, very tough one. Let's go to you. What do you think about this one, Drew?
I agree with a lot of what you said. When it first came out, I was looking towards the Horned Frogs. I mean, outside of Oklahoma, TCU only has one loss, and that was in Ames, Iowa. So pretty respectable record here as far as, not many bad losses on their schedule. Keep in mind, this is the Pac-12 runner-up versus the Big 12 runner-up. So we're starting to get into kind of the bigger echelon bowl games here. You brought up Bryce Love. I think he's one of the best players in the country. He also had time to get healthy. This extra preparation time, I think, should help him in his, I believe it's an ankle problem. And Stanford on the defensive side is getting a little healthier. I believe Harrison Phillips will be playing. He's a force up front on the defensive line, should be able to get after Kenny Hill. And Kenny Hill on the other side is a little bit tough to trust. I will tell you this, though, as far as coaching matchups, it doesn't get much better than this. David Shaw, Gary Patterson, these teams are both going to be well prepared for each other. And I agree with you with the line pushing even up to now. You can get 3 on the other side with the Cardinals. I would take a great coach in David Shaw, extra preparation time with Bryce Love, and a more healthy defensive front, and just put the 3 in my pocket. So I'm going to go Stanford in this one.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I think you made a good point there that, Kenny Hill is a little bit hard to trust, to put it mildly, right, Drew Martin? To put it mildly. I feel like I've gotten burned by him in his career. He's a quarterback who tends to do very well in the beginning of the year and then kind of like let down in a major way as the year goes on. All right, so you're going to make that an official pick, Stanford +3?
Yeah, I would go an official pick because we're putting out picks on every game. So a non-confident Stanford +3. Pete.
I can tell you this is definitely not a bowl that I'm going to be betting. I should probably flip a coin for my pick here. But Drew Martin's going to take Stanford +3, which is now up to +100 at Pinnacle. So some late money really coming in on TCU. Big man on campus. This is a game. If ever there was a bowl that you should have a pass on, this is one I think it is. But I'm going to make a pick on it. So why don't you make a pick on it too? What's your take on this one, big man on campus?
Yeah, you're right. It is a tough one for sure. But Stanford has the best running back in the country, probably, other than, look, I think Rashad Penny overall is the best, but Bryce Love's right there as well. Both teams are really slow tempo-wise, particularly Stanford. And you got to wonder how he'll run against this TCU defense. TCU 4th in the country against the run. Pretty impressive. You have Patterson, who is a defensive mind, and he usually is very good at game planning. He was one that was able to hold Oklahoma State in kind of check for most of that game. But you're right, it's tough. Shaw's good in bowls, so is Patterson. But I lean to Stanford as an underdog. I would agree with Drew. It's a tough game. I wish I could pass, frankly. I don't want to give a pick for this game, but for the sake of the video, I will. I think the physicality that Stanford will play with, I don't know that TCU sees it a whole lot. It's kind of a finesse conference, a lot of throwing the ball, that kind of thing. Stanford will get into the trenches. They have a good offensive line, and Costello's played a lot better.
Yes.
I'm going to go with Stanford as an underdog as well.
And they have some nice tight ends as well. But when I look at that and I think, all right, maybe I'll take Stanford too. It's just I really am a believer in TCU's defense this year. And Stanford looks a little bit vulnerable. I know they're getting a little bit healthier, time to rest, time to prepare, and all that. But Stanford's defense is not as good this year as they need to be when Stanford is one of these top level teams, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I mean, Stanford is, listen, I thought Stanford was a team, Peter, all year. I thought they were a team that could really do some real damage. I mean, they had some question marks in their secondary for a lot of the year, and then they got kind of beaten up by USC. I don't know. It's a real tough game, Peter. I had a lot of trouble kind of coming up with something to talk about in this one. I wish I could skip, but that just goes to show you we're willing to put our necks out for plays here. But I will point out, if you're tailing I would rather, if I were you, I'd tail my college basketball as opposed to the Bulls. But I would agree. I think Stanford is the play gun to my head.
All right, Stanford +3, +100. Jimmy the Bag. Lukewarm recommendations on Stanford from both Drew and BMOC on Stanford now at +3. If this line was 2.5, maybe they'd have different opinions. What's your take on this one, Jimmy the Bag?
I am on Stanford as well, a +3. I'm not a Kenny Hill fan. Like both Drew and Big Man said, this TCU defense is, they apply a lot of pressure. 41 sacks this year. Those 2 defensive ends are beasts, Bozen and Benogu, allowing just 99 yards rushing. But having a break, Bryce getting a chance to rest that high ankle sprain is a really big deal. Yeah. You were talking about some of their tight ends. The 6'6" tight end Dalton Schultz will be a beast in the red zone. the first 5 weeks of the year, 6 weeks of the year, they were a one-dimensional offense, and KJ Costello gave them a bit of a different dimension when he took over. 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's got some magic going with Arcega-Whiteside. I just think that getting the 3 points is an enormous deal, and I understand Gary Patterson 5-0 against Pac-12 opponents, including 2 wins over Stanford. But like Drew said, I think Shaw is a great coach, and I believe in Bryce Love off the break, and I don't like Kenny as a quarterback.
Right.
I don't trust him. I never have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take Stanford +3.
Yeah, nice points there, Jimmy the Bag. I think in this game it does just come down to a trust, and I certainly trust the Stanford system in general under Coach Shaw. Yeah, I'm just concerned about I don't know. I guess I'm just concerned about Stanford's defense. You guys are making great points. Maybe Stanford is a good play here. Drew Martin, let's just quickly go back to you. Do you have anything to say about the total? We've seen a lot of these games in the 40s head over, but Stanford was an undertrend around the year. TCU was a strong undertrend around the year. Both teams can move the ball a bit, so I can see this one being modest scoring, but still, getting over and going into the low 50s, maybe even like a 30-20 type game by the last spell. What's your take on the total, if any? I know we're pushing it here, Drew.
Yeah, no. At first glance, whenever I look at Stanford, I kind of think ball control, running the clock. So I always tend to look under. You brought up both under trenders, but yeah, as you get into the 40s here, like we just saw, taking the loss on that Boston College yesterday, I actually feel it was the right side, the way that those two offenses kind of moved, and it still skirted over the number, and so we have to take the loss on that. I could see some. Yeah, no, good point, big man. So I could see something like that happening again, and I hate taking losses on these type of totals, in the 40s.
Yeah, and again, it's not just that they, if Bryce Love starts to have a big game and starts to go off, that ball will start moving, and then the tight ends will open up as well. All right, Jim, big man on campus, and Drew Barton all taking Stanford +3. I'm not going to bet this one. I will go on with you guys. Stanford +3, +100. Stanford +3, +100. Maybe TCU wins by 1 or 2 points, something like that. And we all cash. So all 4 of us on Stanford +3, +100. Now let's move on to a Michigan State, Washington State. Another very interesting game, right? Washington State's, offense, the air raid offense. Will Michigan State be able to game plan for that and stop it? And Michigan State's offense at times looked stuck in the mud. At other times looked quite dynamic, and we're not sure what we're going to get from Michigan State's quarterback Lewerke. Again, a dual threat. And at times, just looked like he wasn't ready for prime time. At other times, looked like he was a nightmare to defend when everything was working for him. Another factor to be aware of is that Washington State's beast on defense, Hercules Mataafa, out for the first half. Suspended for the first half, and he will be back in the second half. So I don't know. Maybe just because of that, we want to take a shot with Michigan State on the first half. Again, in honor of Drew Martin's overall 10-5 record in these shows. Excellent record, Drew Martin, despite a losing day with all of us yesterday. What's your take on this one, Washington State and Michigan State?
The last game was tough. In my opinion, this game's even tougher. I've had such a tough time with Leach betting on him or against him. I tend to just lose every time I'm involved with him. D'Antonio with extra time to prepare. I hate getting on that side. I just think Washington State with Luke Falk is the more talented quarterback, and I could just see them coming from the Pac-12, throwing it around in San Diego. I actually didn't check the weather. I just see San Diego, and I figure it's 60s with light winds, so it will work out well for the Cougars offense. But gun to head, I have to pick this game. I'm going Cougars, Pete.
Washington State at it's a split line here as well, +1.5, 2 or 2.5 at Intertops. Thanks so much, Intertops, for providing us the best line on Washington State. So you're going to take Washington State +2.5, Drew?
Washington State Cougars reluctantly +2.5.
+2.5, -110. All right, before we get Jimmy the Bag's take on this one, I will tell you that this one, I think I do have a pick. I don't want to take either side here, but I do kind of think that the over might be worth a play. Michigan State might be able to hold Washington State down a bit, but it's a low total, 47.5. And if Lewerke has a good game for Michigan State, they should be able to put up some points as well. It opened at 45. I'll definitely make that one my pick. Over 47.5, -107. 47. That's current line at Pinnacle. It's 47.5 everywhere market wide. Jimmy the Bag, what's your take on this very, very tough bowl? Another tough bowl Thursday, December 28th here.
Well, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and I tried to convince myself to take the Cougars, and I am unable to. First off, now you guys were absolutely right on the Texas backups yesterday. And I broke down the Cougars receivers because Tavares Martin Jr. and Isaiah Johnson Mack, their two top receivers, left the team at the end of the regular season. I don't believe they have enough depth for Falk. I don't think they have enough top receivers for Falk. Now, yes, second highest per game passing average, 374.8. They put up 30 or more points 8 times. They have an excellent offensive line. Jamal Morrow can catch, he can run, he can do everything. It's very impressive. But I'm going to take the Spartans. I'm going to take their defense, ranks 9th nationally in yards allowed per game, 297.8, 24th in points allowed. They held 7 opponents to 14 points or less. They have a whole bunch of guys that can do a lot of damage. Willis, Frey. Brian Lewerke, he has his share of weapons. Felton Davis is going to have a big game. And I like the Cougars' defense does not get enough respect, but not having Mata Afa in the first half is a big loss. The Cougars did this same type of thing last year against Minnesota. They lost to a defensive team. Now, I think this Cougars team is better than they were last year. But as much as I tried to convince myself that the Cougars could win this game, I was unable to, and I will be taking the Spartans cover.
Okay, this is another game where the line is split 1.5 to, or no, actually, yes, 1.5, 2 or 2.5. Bookmaker has 1.5. So Jimmy the Bag's going to take Michigan State minus 1.5, minus 110. That's the line right now at Bookmaker. And again, if this line lands on 2, both Jimmy the Bag and Drew Martin will cover. There's also another issue here to be aware of, which is that Michigan State kind of feels slighted that they didn't get a better bowl game. Michigan, of course, unranked and lost to Michigan State. Got a New Year's Day bowl, and D'Antonio had a little bit of a Twitter war, right, with Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh. You know, D'Antonio was like, why didn't we get a New Year's Day bowl? And they were like, shut up. And he was like, shut up. And so they're pissed, you know. They want a little bit of redemption. Does that matter to you, Drew Martin, right? Michigan State, ranked higher than Michigan, beat Michigan, and now has to play the Holiday Bowl. Didn't get a New Year's Day bowl that Michigan got. They might come out here super pissed, right, Drew Martin?
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a tough one, and Pete, I can't stress enough. This is one of my least confident picks of bowl season. Although a trip to San Diego is not a bad consolation prize for East Lansing, Michigan.
Let's go to a big man on campus. An interesting bowl here. I have to say that I'm leaning Michigan State. That's how I was thinking as well for the motivational factor. Drew Martin admitted that every time he picks a Washington State game, he's on the wrong side. He likes Washington State here. I'm thinking Michigan State might be the plan. I've already given the over as a pick. What's your take on this one, big man on campus?
I'm ready to fly with this one, Peter Loshak. I'm ready to go with the Holiday Bowl. First of all, Jimmy the Bag made a comment that Washington State is a good offensive line. They're among the worst in the country, Jimmy. Are you looking at the right stats there? I think they're going to have a big problem tonight. Luke Falk I like as a passer. I think he's very good, but you got to look at the fact that he is a statue behind the line. And this is an offensive line that's 125th in the country in giving sacks up per game. They had a lot of trouble with Cal, if you remember. This isn't a Michigan State defense that's good. And you mentioned, Peter, the motivation here. Not only do you have that motivation, but you have a motivation of not playing well last year. This team was 3-9 last year. They had a bad season. They had some personnel problems. They still have L.J. Scott. Lewerke's turned into quite the passer. And Jimmy makes a great point with Isaiah Johnson, Mack, and Tavares Martin not playing. It's okay to lose some players. It happens during bowl season. But you're losing 130 receptions and 14 touchdowns. That's a lot of production to lose in an offense that is very reliant on the pass. They're going to have to get Morrow, Williams, Gerard Wicks. They're going to have to get them involved tonight. I don't know how involved they'll be with a bad offensive line, with the team that's playing with a lot of motivation. And to be frank, the Pac-12 just hasn't been very good in bowl games. I have to agree with Jimmy the Bag and go with Michigan State here. I'm concerned about Luke Falk in this game. He's been beaten up all year. I don't think it's going to get any easier tonight either.
Yeah, I'm actually not concerned about the losses at receiver for Washington State, but I am concerned about a lot of other issues in this game. I was leading Michigan State as well, so I'll add that one as a second pick. Michigan State -1.5, -110, currently at Bookmaker. So Big Man on Campus, Jimmy the Bag, and I are all on Michigan State -1.5, -110. Drew Martin on Washington State +2.5. Drew Martin, how you feeling about your pick? You're feeling equally as lukewarm in that favor as you were before you heard analysis, or are you thinking about switching to Michigan State here?
Yeah, I might make the first switch of the season. I just want to come back at Big Man on Campus. So, yeah, with the receivers out, Big Man, do you know anything about their backups? Because remember, Texas had some players out, and their defensive line, was kind of was pretty deep, and they looked to be pretty good. Could you see the backup receivers stepping up for Washington State?
Here's the problem they're going to have. Kyle Sweet's a pretty good receiver. I mean, I'd put him in with DeVarce Martin and Johnson Mack. The other high-level receivers, though, are going to be the running back, Jamal Morrow, James Williams. They're going to have to throw a lot out of the backfield, screens, that sort of thing. You just don't – and when you're a team like Washington and Luke Falk, you're so reliant on those receivers. I mean, they've had some great receivers over the years with him, and that's why he's been so successful through the air. Last year, I really like what Washington State did. They ran the ball a little bit more. This year, they're back to their old ways. All they do is throw the ball. And Mike Leach will make stupid decisions in bowl games. He does it all the time. I'm a fan of him off the field. I think he's really built these programs up, but he does make some poor decisions at times. He benched Luke Falk out of nowhere in certain games this year because I think he was just upset of Luke Falk not listening to him or something like that. He's a weird guy and makes bad decisions a lot of the time. In a bowl game, I want the more competent coach. I love Leach. I think he's, like I said, built up a lot of good programs, but he's maddening to bet on, really, because like Joe Girardi and other managers in other sports, he makes poor decisions that make you just want to rip your fucking hair out.
On the other hand, Washington State was a good bet for most of the year, ATS, until they got blown out in their last game by Washington. But Michigan State was also a profitable bet on the year as well. All right, Drew Martin, that was a great breakdown there by Big Man on Campus. And my sense on if there's one area where Washington State can sustain injuries, it's in the receiving core because they plan for that. They know what their offense is predicated on. So they've always got receivers coming in who are probably going to be as good as the ones who might get injured or suspended. But again, I'm on Michigan State for other reasons. The receivers being out, if that hurts, that's just a nice little plus. I'm not basing my pick on Michigan State on the receivers being out at all. I have other reasons for liking Michigan State. Drew Martin, you want to wrap up this show by sticking with your guns, or do you want to tail three guys with losing records in the bowl games while your record is 10-5 so far this year in these shows?
Fuck it. My read on Mike Leach and company has been terrible all season. I will say this. If you haven't seen Mike Leach's wedding video, you need to Google it. Say thanks later. Just check that out. Off the field, Mike Leach, one of the best coaches. Big Man hit on it, though. In-game decisions, he's awful. I'll make the switch. You guys make some great points. I'll be on the Spartans.
Okay, 10-5. Drew Martin tailing a bunch of 6-10 guys, taking Michigan State.
I'm 3-3.
3-3. That's right. Jimmy the Bag. 3-3. Right. That's right. Sorry about that.
Don't bring me into your losing.
Right. I did not mean to group you in with the ugliness.
For the record, you did miss a lot of bowl games, Jim. I mean, you could be a loser.
Yes, that's right, Jimmy the Bag.
All we can do is count the games I'm here for, Big Man. That's all we can do, my friend.
Good point. They don't give me a day off, though, unfortunately. So I don't have that luxury. When I make the big bucks like you, maybe I will.
All right, so Drew Martin has officially switched to Michigan State -1.5. Let's review all the picks. Jimmy the Bag on Virginia +2.5 -105. Oklahoma State -6. Stanford +3 +100. And Michigan State -1.5. Big Man on Campus on Navy -1.5. Oklahoma State over 61.5 -107. Stanford +3 +100. And Michigan State -1.5. Drew Martin on Virginia +2.5 -105. The Oklahoma State game over 61.5. Stanford +3 and Michigan State -1.5. And I'm on a bunch of picks today. Navy game over 51, Oklahoma State -6, and the Oklahoma State game over 61.5. I went with those guys on Stanford +3 +100, and I'm also on the Michigan State game -1.5 and the over on that game 47.5 -107. These are four tough bowl games, guys, and I think that overall our picks are pretty solid here. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back tomorrow and all have a positive record. I think we did a hell of a job breaking down these tough lines to a handicap, and we will be back tomorrow, Friday, December 29th, with 5 bowls on the Friday card. We will handicap the hell out of all of them. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much, Jimmy the Bag, Big Man on Campus, and Drew Martin, as usual.
Thank you.